Let's create a test case. When there are no cases in a project, we'll see this Create button in the Overview tab. However, even if a single case is present in the project, the number of cases in the project will be shown over here, and this option to create test case will not be available. A better way to create a test case would be to go to the Cases tab and then click on Create Case button. Clicking on Create Case button should launch the Create New Case model. Title is the first field available on this model. By default, this is the only mandatory field to create a case. However, project admin can mark other fields also as mandatory. Let's provide a title or a name for our case. Let's look at the other fields or attributes of a test case which are available in AIO Tests by default. After title, we have description, which is self-explanatory. Then we have preconditions, which is where you can list any preconditions for the case that needs to be executed before this case can be executed. Next, we have folders. If you plan to organize your test cases in a folder, you can create a folder structure and select the desired folder over here. For now, we'll skip that because right now we don't have any folder structure created for this project. Next, we have the owner. This is the test case owner, and by default, the creator of the test case is marked as the owner. Let's leave it like that for now. Next, we have the priority field. If you click on the drop-down, you will see 5 different priorities that AIO tests provide you by default. All these priorities are configurable and can be configured by the project admin. These can be renamed, new priorities can be added, and the existing priorities can be deleted. Let's select medium priority for this particular case. Next, we have a status. By default, AIO tests provide you 4 out-of-the-box statuses. When a case is created and a status is not specifically selected, it is created in draft status. When a case is in draft status, it is only visible to the owner of the case. If you have a review process, you can mark the case as under review after the creation of the case, and the reviewer can later on mark it as published, which is when it will be available for addition to sets and cycles and for execution. Let's leave it in draft status for now. Next, we have test types. AIO Test provides you with these 6 different test types out of the box. Test types can be used to further classify your test cases. For this test case, let's select the functional test type. Note that just like priorities, statuses and test types can also be customized by project admins from project settings. Next, we have component. This is the Jira component available for the project. If we go to a project and using the left-hand side navigation menu for the project, click on the components item. All the components available for this project should load. In the AIO Tests app, in the drop-down menu, the values populated for this field are the same as the components available in Jira. However, please note that components are not available in all types of projects in Jira. Here we are in a company managed project and components are available, but not in all types of projects these are available. If components are not available, we'll not see any values in the drop-down in AI tests. Let's select the standard features component for our test case. Next, we have release. Just like components, this is also a Jira field. We know it in Jira as fix versions. If we go to a Jira project, using the left-hand side navigation menu, we can click on the release item. And here we'll see all the available releases for this particular project. In AIO tests, in the release dropdown, the same value should be available. For our test, let's select release 1. Note that the selected value for priority, type, component, and release can be cleared using the cross icon available within the field. However, status is different. Although status is not a mandatory field from user input perspective, it is implicitly mandatory, and if user doesn't provide an input, the first available status is selected by default, and this field cannot be cleared. Next, we have the estimated effort field, which is where we can provide the estimated efforts required by the tester to execute this case manually. Here, for our case, we will provide 1 minute. Next, we have tags. Tags in AIO tests are like labels in Jira. Teams use tags for various different use cases. For our test case, we don't really have to use tags, but just for demonstration purposes, let's imagine a scenario. Let's assume we want to specify whether a case covers a standard scenario or an edge case scenario. We can do that with the help of tags. Let's create a tag for edge case scenario. After you have typed the name of the tag, hit enter, and the tag will be created and associated with the case. If you want to unlink this tag with the case, click on this cross button and it will be unlinked. You can select a different tag from a drop-down menu. Let's select standard scenario for this case. Next, we have Jira requirements. To establish traceability between our test case and the Jira requirement that it needs to cover, we can use this option. To search for our requirements, we can start typing, and from the search results, we can select the requirement that we want to link, and then click on Add button to actually link the requirement. If we have linked the wrong requirement and we want to unlink it, we can use this delete option to unlink the requirement from the test case. Then we can search for the right requirement and link the correct requirement. Next, we have the automation section. In case you have a process of automating your manual cases, this section can be used to better manage the process. The first field in this section is the status field, which is the current automation status of this particular case. The next field in this section is the owner field, which is the automation owner, and it should be this person responsible for automating this case. The next field is the automation key. This is an identifier which links the current case with the actual automated test, and it can be used to report the actual automated execution results into AIO tests. For our example case, we are going to skip the automation section. And finally, we have this attachment section wherein we can choose to attach any artifacts. For this example case, we don't really have any artifacts, so we'll skip this section as well. Note that if project admins have defined any custom fields within AIO tests, we will see a section for custom fields on this model. For our basic example, let's skip custom fields also. At this point, we can either click on Create Case on the model footer to create our case without any steps, or we can click on Add Steps to start adding steps. Let's click on Add Steps. So we can see our case to do TC6 has been created, and now we are on the second step of the case creation process where we can start adding steps. We can either add classic steps to our test case, or we can add BDD Gherkin steps. For our example test case, let's add classic steps. To do that, click on Add Steps. In a classic step, in the step column, we need to mention the action or test that needs to be performed to run this test step. In the data column, we need to provide any test data that may be required to run this test step. This is optional. In the expected results column, we need to mention the result or the expected behavior that signifies that this test step is successful. Let's add a test step to our example test case. We can click on the plus icon to add another step. Let's do that. Let's add another step. After adding the steps, click on Save Steps to save the test case. We'll see the confirmation message. We can click on this test case to see the details of the test case that was just created. We can click on the Steps tab to see the details of the steps that we added to our test case.